She kissed a stranger at midnight on New Year's Eve and disappeared into the crowd. He spent a month searching for her. When he finally found one blurry photo showing her employee badge, he did something insane. He bought the entire company just to see her again. But when he walked through those factory doors, and their eyes met, she ran. Happy New Year, my beautiful Pride family. Welcome back to another enriching story. Your unwavering support means the world to me, and I'm committed to bringing you even more heartwarming stories for you all as I continue to grow and evolve every day. If you're joining us for the first time, please drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button to officially become part of our Pride family. Now, let's get right into it. The Thames reflected 1,000 lights as Elena Ross stood alone on South Bank, her breath forming small clouds in the December air. It was 11:07 on New Year's Eve, and London pulsed with celebration around her while she remained perfectly still, watching the dark water flow beneath Westminster Bridge. 3 months, she thought, her fingers gripping the cold metal railing. 3 months since she'd stepped off a plane with nothing but a suitcase and terror in her chest. 3 months since she'd escaped Miami, escaped Marcus Thorne's fists and the particular kind of prison that wore the mask of love. The crowd thickened as midnight approached, couples intertwined like vines, friends passing bottles of champagne, tourists filming everything with bright phone screens. Elena felt the loneliness like a physical weight pressing down on her shoulders, making her small. She'd come here to feel something, anything other than the numbness that had settled into her bones. The fireworks would be beautiful, people said. A new beginning, they promised. She wanted desperately to believe them. At 11:23, she felt it. A presence to her left, warm and solid in the chaos. She didn't turn her head, didn't acknowledge it, but her entire body became aware. Someone was watching her, not the casual glance of a stranger in a crowd, but focused attention, deliberate and intense. Her heart kicked against her ribs, fear mixing with something else, something she'd thought Marcus had killed in her forever. Curiosity. The minutes crawled. 11:31, 11:45. The presence remained, constant as a lighthouse beam. Elena risked a glance from the corner of her eye and saw him. Tall, perhaps 6'2", with dark hair slightly disheveled by the wind. American, she thought, though she couldn't say why she knew. Something about the cut of his coat, the confident way he occupied space. He wasn't looking at the river or the London Eye or the gathering fireworks crew across the water. He was looking at her. Their eyes met for half a second before Elena jerked her gaze back to the Thames, her pulse hammering. She should leave. That was the smart thing, the safe thing. Strange men who stared weren't to be trusted, but her feet stayed planted, and beneath the fear, something warm unfurled in her chest. When was the last time someone had looked at her like that? Like she was worth watching, worth staying near? 11:58. The crowd began to count, voices rising in anticipation. 60, 59, 58. Elena felt him move closer, not touching, not speaking, just existing in her orbit. She could smell him now, cedar and something crisp, expensive. Her hands trembled on the railing. 45, 44, 43. She turned her head. He was right there, perhaps 2 feet away, and up close he was devastating. Sharp jaw, eyes that looked dark in the dim light but held flecks of gold from the street lamps, and an expression that was both confident and vulnerable, asking a question without words. 30, 29, 28. He took 1 step closer. She didn't move away. 15, 14, 13. His hand lifted slow enough that she could refuse, and his fingers brushed her cheek with the lightness of a question mark. Elena's breath caught, Every instinct screamed danger, but her body betrayed her, leaning infinitesimally toward his touch. 5, 4, 3. He kissed her as the countdown continued. "Happy New Year!" The crowd cheered while their lips were still locked on each other. The sky exploded in gold and silver. It started soft, tentative, his lips barely grazing hers as if testing whether she'd shatter. But Elena made a sound, small and desperate, and something in both of them broke open. His hand slid into her hair, hers clutched the front of his coat, and the kiss deepened into something that felt like drowning and breathing at the same time. She tasted champagne on his tongue, though she didn't know if he'd been drinking or if that was just the flavor of celebration in the air. His other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her close, and she went willingly, pressed against his chest like she could climb inside his warmth and stay there. The fireworks continued their symphony overhead, but Elena heard nothing except the thundering of her own heart and the small, shattered noise he made when she kissed him back harder. 3 months of numbness burning away in the heat between them. When they finally broke apart, both gasping, his forehead rested against hers. His eyes, she could see now, were hazel, more gold than brown, and they held wonder. "I just needed to do that. Thank you," he said, his voice rough and American and confirmed. Boston, maybe, with that particular clip to his consonants. Elena opened her mouth, but no words emerged. What could she possibly say? "I'm glad I could help. Who are you? Please don't let me go." The crowd jostled them, surging forward to get better views of the fireworks. Ethan's grip on her tightened protectively, but the press of bodies was relentless. Someone bumped Elena hard from behind, and she stumbled. Ethan steadied her, his hands on her shoulders, and opened his mouth to speak. "Watch it, mate," someone yelled, and another body crashed between them. Elena blinked, disoriented by the chaos, and when her vision cleared, Ethan was 3 feet away, then 5, then 10. The crowd had become a living wall, pulling them apart like a riptide. "Wait!" she heard him shout, his hand reaching over the heads of strangers. She tried to push forward, but the mass of celebrating humanity had its own momentum. She caught one more glimpse of his face, desperate and searching, before he disappeared entirely into the throng of people streaming toward the bridge. Elena stood frozen as the crowd thinned, her fingers touching her lips. They were swollen, tingling, alive. She turned in a circle, scanning faces. But he was gone. Completely, impossibly gone, like a dream, like something she'd imagined. Except she could still feel the imprint of his hands on her waist, could still taste him, could still hear his voice in her head. Walking home to her cramped Bethnal Green flat at 12:47 in the morning, Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks. Not sad tears, not exactly happy tears, either. Something else, something that felt dangerously close to hope. She whispered to the empty street, to the London night, to herself. "Who were you?" Her phone buzzed in her pocket. Her entire body went rigid, the warmth from the kiss evaporating like steam. She stared at the screen as it rang once, twice, 3 times, then went silent. No voicemail. There never was. It had been 3 months since the last call, 92 days of blessed silence, and she'd started to believe, to hope, that maybe Marcus had finally let her go. But looking at those words, blocked number, she heard his voice in her memory, the last thing he'd said before she'd gotten on the plane. "You can't hide from me forever, baby. I'll find you. I always find you." Elena deleted the missed call notification with shaking fingers and walked faster. Ethan Vance couldn't sleep. At 2:13 in the morning, he stood in his Mayfair penthouse 15 floors above London, staring out at the glittering city and seeing nothing except her face. Dark skin that had glowed in the firework light, eyes that held oceans of hurt and hope, lips that had trembled before they'd parted for him. The kiss replayed in his head on an endless loop, a sensation memory so vivid he could feel the silk of her hair between his fingers. The way she'd made that sound, desperate and surprised, like she'd forgotten her own capacity for desire. He'd watched her for an hour before midnight. That was the part that would sound insane if he said it aloud, the part that made him question his own sanity. Ethan Vance, founder and CEO of Vance Global, a man who'd built a billion-dollar empire on logic and strategy and calculated risk, had seen a stranger by the river and been unable to look away. She'd arrived at 11:04 alone, wearing a dark coat that was too thin for the weather. She'd gripped the railing like it was the only thing keeping her upright. And she'd stared at the water with an expression that Ethan recognized because he'd worn it himself in mirrors during his worst moments. Loss, loneliness, the specific devastation of surviving something that had tried to destroy you. He tried to walk away 3 times, once at 11:18 when he told himself he was being a creep, that watching a woman without her knowledge was wrong. Again at 11:31, when he'd actually made it 15 feet before his feet stopped obeying his brain and carried him back. The 3rd time was at 11:49, a last-ditch attempt at sanity, but by then it was too late. The countdown was starting, and the only thought in his head was crystalline and irrefutable. He couldn't let midnight pass without knowing what it would feel like to kiss her. The decision had bypassed every rational center of his brain and come from somewhere primal, undeniable. His body had moved on instinct, closing the distance, lifting his hand to her cheek. And when she'd leaned into his touch instead of pulling away, when she'd let him kiss her, when she'd kissed him back with a passion that matched his own, Ethan had felt something slot into place in his chest. Something he hadn't known was missing. Now she was gone, and he didn't even know her name. "You're being ridiculous," he told his reflection in the dark window. "It was one kiss, a holiday impulse. You'll forget about it in a week." But even as he said the words, he knew they were a lie. That kiss had been the realest thing he'd felt in years, maybe ever. And the woman, the mystery woman with sad eyes and a mouth that tasted like hope, she wasn't someone he could forget. She was someone he needed to find. At 7:30 the next morning, Ethan called Sienna Brooks. She answered on the 2nd ring, her voice professionally crisp despite the early hour and the holiday. "Happy New Year, Ethan. What do you need?" "I need you to think I'm not completely insane for a moment," Ethan said, pacing his bedroom. He hadn't bothered to change, hadn't showered, had spent the entire night alternating between the window and his bed, chasing sleep that wouldn't come. There was a pause. "Should I be worried?" "I kissed someone last night at midnight on South Bank." "Congratulations." Sienna's tone was carefully neutral. "I'm not sure why this requires a 7:30 phone call." "Because I lost her in the crowd, and I can't stop thinking about her. I know how that sounds, Sienna. I know it sounds like a midlife crisis or temporary insanity, but I'm telling you, this was different. She was different." Another pause, longer this time. When Sienna spoke again, something had shifted in her voice, a tightness that Ethan was too distracted to analyze. "Different how?" "I can't explain it. I saw her, and it was like lightning striking, like recognition. Does that sound insane?" "A bit," Sienna admitted. "But you're not generally given to flights of fancy, so I'm inclined to take you seriously. What do you want me to do about it?" "I don't know yet, but I'm going to find her, whatever it takes." After they hung up, Sienna Brooks sat very still in her Knightsbridge apartment, her phone resting on her lap, her perfectly manicured nails digging into her palms. 7 years. She'd worked beside Ethan for 7 years, had made herself indispensable, had been patient and professional, and everything a man like him needed. She'd watched him date models and heiresses and brilliant entrepreneurs, had consoled herself with the knowledge that none of them lasted. None of them truly mattered to him. But this was different. She could hear it in his voice. This wasn't another casual fling. This was a threat. Elena woke at 9:17 on New Year's Day, with the kiss still burning on her lips, and reality settling back into her bones. She had work tomorrow, Monday the 2nd, another shift at Sterling Textiles factory, where she operated industrial looms for $9.50 an hour. She had rent due on the 5th, $73 left in her account after paying it, and a past she was trying desperately to outrun. Beautiful strangers who kissed like they were drowning didn't fit into that life. But when she closed her eyes, she felt his hands in her hair. The first week of January crawled by in a gray blur of work and cold, and the growing sense that something had shifted in Elena's chest. She couldn't stop thinking about him, couldn't stop replaying those few perfect minutes before the crowd had torn them apart. She sketched his face in her journal, trying to capture the exact shape of his jaw, the way his eyes had held both confidence and vulnerability, like he was just as surprised by the kiss as she was. "You're drawing him again," Maya said, leaning over Elena's shoulder during their lunch break in the factory's dingy break room. "That's the 5th version this week. Either you're obsessed or in love. And given you don't know his name, I'm voting obsessed." Elena slammed the journal shut, heat flooding her face. "I'm not. It's just, I can't stop thinking about it." "About him?" Maya grinned, her dark eyes sparkling with mischief. She was the first friend Elena had made in London, a force of nature who'd taken one look at the scared American girl on her first day and decided they were going to be sisters. "Tell me again, every detail. I want to live vicariously. There's nothing to tell that I haven't already said." "Then say it again." "I'm a romantic, Elle. Feed me." Elena rolled her eyes, but felt a smile tugging at her mouth. He appeared next to me. Didn't say anything at first, just stood there. I could feel him watching me, and it should have been creepy, but it wasn't. It was like he was giving me space to choose." "Choose what?" "Whether to run or stay." Elena's voice softened. "I stayed. And then he kissed you at midnight and disappeared like Cinderella in reverse, leaving you with no glass slipper and just the memory of really excellent kissing." Maya sighed dramatically. "Do you know how rare that is? Excellent kissing? My ex kissed like a confused cod." Elena laughed, actually laughed, the sound startling in its genuineness. "Thank you for that image." "Seriously, though," Maya said, her tone shifting to something more gentle. "You know what they say about New Year's kisses, right? Whoever you kiss at midnight is tied to your fate for the year. That's just a superstition. Is it, though? Because you look more alive right now talking about a stranger than you've looked in the 3 months I've known you. Maybe fate put him in your path for a reason." That night, alone in her flat, Elena let herself imagine it. Let herself picture a world where fate was real, where the stranger came back, where she got to feel that alive again. But when her phone buzzed, the fantasy shattered like glass. She didn't answer. She never did. But she lay awake until dawn, fear sitting on her chest like a stone. Ethan spent the first 2 weeks of January doing something he'd never done before, chasing a ghost. He hired a private investigator, an ex-MI5 officer named Logan Hunt, who charged obscene rates and guaranteed results. Ethan gave him everything he had, which wasn't much. The location, the time, a detailed physical description that Ethan had apparently memorized down to the small scar on her left eyebrow and the way her hair had caught the firework light. I'll need you to understand that finding one woman in a city of 9 million people with no name, no photo, and only a general description is close to impossible," Logan said in their first meeting at Ethan's office. "Then we start with the possible and work our way up," Ethan replied. "I want you to pull security footage from every camera on South Bank between 11 p.m. and midnight on New Year's Eve. Traffic cameras, business security, tourist footage, everything. That's tons of hours of video. Then hire people to help you review it. Money isn't an obstacle. Time is." Logan studied him with the assessing gaze of someone who'd made a career reading people. "You really care about finding this woman?" It wasn't a question, but Ethan answered anyway. "More than I've cared about anything in a long time." By January 19th, they had something. One frame, grainy and backlit by fireworks, but clear enough. There she was, her face turned toward the camera, and there, just visible on the lapel of her coat, the edge of an employee identification badge. The company name was too blurred to read, but the shape and color scheme were distinct. Logan enhanced the image, ran it through databases, cross-referenced with companies that issued that style of badge. On January 22nd, he called Ethan with results. "I've got 3 possible matches. 2 security firms and a textile factory in East London called Sterling Textiles. The badge color and design are consistent." "Start with the factory," Ethan said immediately, something in his gut telling him that was right. A factory would explain the worn quality of her coat, the way she'd stood by the river like someone who worked with her hands and carried exhaustion in her bones. "What do you want me to do if I confirm she works there?" Ethan was quiet for a long moment. "Nothing yet. Just find out if she's there. I'll handle the rest myself." What he didn't tell Logan was that he'd already made a decision. If she worked at Sterling Textiles, he was going to buy it. The entire company. It was insane. Probably the most irrational business decision of his career. But Ethan Vance had built an empire on trusting his instincts. And every instinct he had was screaming that this woman, this stranger who'd kissed him like she was drowning, was important. She was everything. On January 24th, Logan confirmed it. An employee matching her description worked at Sterling Textiles. He couldn't get a name without raising suspicion, but she was there. Ethan made the call to his acquisition team that same day. Elena heard the rumors on February 3rd, a Tuesday that started like any other until Maya appeared at her station during the morning break, eyes wide with barely contained panic. "We're being bought," Maya said without preamble. "The whole company, some massive conglomerate out of nowhere." Elena's hands stilled on the loom. "Bought? What do you mean, bought?" "I mean sold, acquired, whatever corporate word you want to use. Management got the news this morning. There's going to be an announcement today. The new owner is coming to tour the facility." Maya's voice dropped to a whisper. "Everyone's terrified about layoffs. New owners always cut staff." The news should have worried Elena more than it did. She should have been thinking about her job, her rent, her precarious financial situation. Instead, her mind snagged on something else. Blocked number. The calls that had increased to 3 times a week. The growing certainty that Marcus was getting closer. Maybe losing her job would be a blessing. Maybe she needed to move again, disappear more thoroughly this time. At noon, the convoy arrived. 2 black SUVs and a Rolls-Royce, expensive and official, pulling into the factory's cracked parking lot like visiting dignitaries. Elena stood with the other workers in the courtyard, required attendance for the meet and greet, shivering in her thin coat. She wasn't paying attention to the cars, wasn't curious about the new owner. She was thinking about how long she could survive on her savings if she had to run again. Then the car door opened, and Ethan Vance stepped out. Time fractured. Elena's breath stopped in her lungs, her vision tunneling until all she could see was him. Taller than she remembered, broader in the shoulders, wearing a suit that one could tell was luxury. He looked every inch the billionaire, powerful and polished, surrounded by executives in equally expensive clothes. And then his eyes swept the crowd and landed on her. She watched recognition hit him like a physical blow. His entire body went rigid, his expression cycling through shock, disbelief, and then something that looked like pure, unfiltered joy. He took a step toward her, his hand lifting slightly like he was going to call out. Elena couldn't move, couldn't breathe, couldn't process what was happening. The stranger from New Year's Eve was here, at her workplace, staring at her like she was a miracle. A woman appeared at Ethan's elbow, blonde and elegant in a cream pantsuit, her hand touching his arm with familiar ease. She said something Elena couldn't hear, and Ethan's attention was forcibly redirected toward the factory entrance. But he kept looking back, his eyes searching the crowd, trying to find her face again. Elena didn't give him the chance. She slipped backward through the press of bodies, using her co-workers as cover. And when she reached the edge of the crowd, she ran. Not toward the factory, but toward the back exit, the service road, anywhere that wasn't here. Her mind was chaos. He bought the factory. That's what this was. That's why he was here. But why? Why would a man like that buy a failing textile company in East London? It didn't make sense. Nothing made sense. Except he'd been looking for her? The realization hit her as she reached the service road, her breath coming in sharp gasps. He'd bought an entire company to find her. The stranger, who'd kissed her once for barely 3 minutes, had moved corporate mountains to see her again. It was romantic. It was terrifying. It was impossible. And Elena knew with the sick certainty of experience that if Marcus found out she was connected to someone like Ethan Vance, someone wealthy and high-profile and searchable, he would come for her. Not just to take her back, but to destroy everything she'd tried to build. To punish her for daring to feel something for someone else. She couldn't go back to the factory. Not today, maybe not ever. Elena called in sick for the next 3 days. A cowardly move that would probably get her fired. But she couldn't face him. Couldn't stand in front of Ethan Vance and explain that yes, she'd felt everything he'd felt during that kiss. And no, they couldn't do anything about it because she was broken and dangerous and he deserved so much better. Maya called her 17 times. Elena answered on the 18th. "You need to tell me what's happening," Maya said. No preamble, just worry sharpening her usually playful voice. "You disappear during the new owner's visit, then you're sick for 3 days, and key people are asking questions. Management wants to know if you're coming back." "I don't know," Elena whispered. She was sitting on her bathroom floor, journal open to the sketch of Ethan's face, the one she'd drawn from memory that now felt like a premonition. "What do you mean you don't know? What happened?" "He was there. The man from New Year's. He's the one who bought the company." Silence then. "I'm sorry, what?" "Ethan Vance, the new owner. He's the one who kissed me." Elena heard Maya's sharp intake of breath. That's like something out of a movie. That's fate. That's the universe literally arranging for you to meet. Why do you sound terrified? This is good news. This is amazing news." "It's not," Elena said, tears sliding down her cheeks. "Maya, you don't understand. If Marcus finds out I'm connected to someone like that, someone he can Google and see in tabloids, I can't put Ethan in danger. I can't." "So, you're going to run?" "I don't know what else to do." Maya was quiet for a long moment. When she spoke again, her voice was gentle. "Has it occurred to you that maybe Ethan Vance is exactly the kind of man who can protect you from Marcus? That maybe you don't have to run this time?" The question sat in Elena's chest like a seed, terrifying and hopeful in equal measure. Ethan was losing his mind. He'd seen her, confirmed with his own eyes that she was real, that the kiss hadn't been a fever dream, and then she'd vanished like smoke. Worse, she'd been avoiding him for 3 days, calling in sick, according to the factory manager. And Ethan knew. He knew it wasn't illness keeping her away. It was him. "You're going to wear a hole in the carpet," Sienna said from her position on his office couch. It was late, past 9:15 p.m., and she'd stayed to help him strategize, though her help had mostly consisted of telling him he was obsessing. "She's avoiding me," Ethan said, pacing between his desk and the window. "Why would she avoid me unless she didn't feel what I felt? Unless it was just a kiss to her, and I've built it into something it wasn't?" "Or," Sienna said carefully, "she's scared. You bought an entire company to find her, Ethan. That's a lot. It could be overwhelming." Ethan stopped pacing. "I didn't think about that. God, I didn't think about how it would look from her perspective. She probably thinks I'm some obsessed stalker." "Are you not?" Sienna's tone was light, teasing, but something brittle lived underneath it. I don't know what I am. I just know I need to talk to her. I need to know her name, hear her voice, understand why she ran on New Year's and why she's running now." Sienna stood, smoothing her skirt with precise movements. "Then go to the factory tomorrow. Wait for her. Don't let her run this time." Ethan met her eyes, grateful. "Thank you, Sienna. I know I'm being ridiculous." "You're being human," she said softly. "It's actually nice to see." After Sienna left, she sat in her car in the parking garage for 11 minutes, hands gripping the steering wheel until her knuckles went white. She'd pulled Elena Ross's employee file that afternoon, had read every detail of the woman who was dismantling 7 years of patient waiting. Domestic abuse survivor, restraining order, fled Miami 3 months ago. The information sat in Sienna's mind like ammunition. She wasn't proud of the thoughts forming there, wasn't proud of the plan taking shape. But love, or what she'd convinced herself was love, made people do desperate things. If Elena Ross believed she was dangerous to Ethan, she'd run on her own. No villain required, just truth, delivered at the right moment, in the right way. Sienna started her car and drove home, already composing the words she'd say when the time came. The next day, Ethan arrived at Sterling Textiles, determined to wait as long as it took. But the factory was closed. The parking lot empty except for a security guard, who informed him that they weren't open on Sundays, and most workers wouldn't return until Monday morning. So Ethan went back on Monday, and Tuesday, and Wednesday. Each time, Sienna had somehow scheduled tours of other facilities, meetings with other departments, anything that kept him away from the textile floor where Elena worked. He was getting frustrated, suspicious even, but Sienna was smooth, her excuses reasonable, and Ethan had trusted her for 7 years. He didn't know he was being managed. On February 10th, a Thursday, Ethan's patience broke. He arrived at the factory unscheduled and alone, and walked directly to the textile floor. Sienna was in meetings across town, couldn't intercept him, and for the first time since the acquisition, Ethan had clear access. The floor was massive, loud with the rhythm of industrial looms, warm with the heat of machines and bodies. Ethan walked between the stations, scanning faces, his heart hammering against his ribs. Workers glanced at him, curious and nervous, the boss walking among them unannounced. And then he saw her, last station on the right, head bent over her work, dark hair pulled back in a bun, wearing the same thin coat she'd worn on New Year's Eve. She hadn't noticed him yet, focused on the fabric threading through her machine, and Ethan stopped breathing. She was real. She was here. She was so beautiful it hurt to look at her. He crossed the space between them, his footsteps lost in the machine noise. She must have sensed his approach because her head lifted, and their eyes met across 10 feet of concrete floor. The world stopped. Ethan watched a dozen emotions flicker across her face. Shock, recognition, fear, longing, desperation. Her hands trembled, fingers stilling on the loom. He stopped 10 feet away, giving her space, not approaching closer without permission. When he spoke, he had to raise his voice over the machines, but he kept it soft, reverent. "It's really you." Elena's lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes were wide, filling with tears that she blinked back furiously. Ethan took one step closer. Just one. "I've been searching for you for a month. I thought I was losing my mind. Tell me I'm not crazy." The words hung between them, a confession and a plea. Elena's face crumpled, and she shook her head. But Ethan couldn't tell if she was denying his words or denying herself the permission to agree. You're mistaken," she whispered. But her voice cracked on the lie, barely audible over the machines. "Elena Ross!" a supervisor's voice called from across the floor. "Back to work! You're on the clock!" The spell broke. Elena jerked her attention back to her loom, her hands moving mechanically, but tears were streaming silently down her face, and Ethan felt something tear in his chest. He opened his mouth to say more, to push harder, but Sienna's voice echoed through the space. "Ethan, there you are! We have the conference call with Tokyo in 15 minutes. We need to go." She'd appeared like a ghost, perfectly timed, her hand already on his elbow, steering him away. Ethan resisted, his eyes locked on Elena. 5 more minutes. The call can't be rescheduled, Ethan. It's the Nakamura deal. 6 months of negotiation. You have to take this. Ethan looked between Sienna and Elena, duty and desire warring in his chest. Elena still wasn't looking at him, her shoulders rigid, and he realized pushing now would only scare her more. He let Sienna lead him away, but he looked back 3 times. On the third look, Elena's eyes met his, and the devastation there nearly stopped his feet. That night, Ethan sat in his office, ignoring the Tokyo call that Sienna had insisted was urgent, but turned out to be routine. He'd been played, managed, and he was starting to understand that. But his focus wasn't on Sienna's interference. It was on the tears on Elena's face. She'd felt it. Whatever had struck him on New Year's Eve, she'd felt it too. But something was making her run. Something that put that fear in her eyes. And Ethan Vance hadn't built an empire by accepting defeat. He pulled out his phone and called Logan Hunt. "I need everything you can find on Elena Ross. Employment history, background, why she came to London, everything. And Logan, I need it as soon as possible." 2 days later, Ethan sat in his penthouse reading the report Logan had delivered and felt rage building in his chest like a living thing. Marcus Thorne. Restraining order. Police reports documenting bruises, broken ribs, a pattern of escalating violence. Elena had fled across an ocean to escape a man who tried to destroy her. And now she was terrified that being near Ethan would paint a target on both of them. She wasn't running from Ethan. She was trying to protect him. The realization shifted everything. This wasn't about convincing her to feel something. The feeling was already there. This was about convincing her that she didn't have to face her nightmare alone. Ethan picked up his phone, found the factory's main number, and asked for personnel records. He got Elena's listed number, took a breath, and dialed. It rang 4 times. He was about to hang up when her voicemail picked up, her voice soft and careful. "This is Elena. Leave a message." The beep sounded, and Ethan spoke from his heart. "Elena, this is Ethan. Ethan Vance. I didn't understand why you were running, but I need you to know the kiss wasn't a game. I saw you before midnight, watched you for an hour, felt pulled to you in a way I've never experienced. If you want me to disappear, I will. But if there's any chance you felt what I felt, Please just give me 5 minutes to talk. Just 5 minutes. That's all I'm asking." He hung up and waited. 3 hours later, his phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Tomorrow. One word, no time, no location. But Ethan felt his heart kick like he'd won the lottery. The next day, Ethan arrived at a cafe in Notting Hill. Elena had texted the location that morning. Just an address, no other details. The cafe was small, quiet, tucked away on a residential street where tourists didn't venture. Ethan chose a table in the back, ordered coffee he didn't drink, and watched the door. She arrived a few minutes later, and Ethan's breath caught in his throat. She wore jeans and a sweater, her hair down around her shoulders, no coat despite the February cold. She looked scared and brave in equal measure, and Ethan had never seen anything more beautiful. He stood as she approached, a gesture of respect, and waited until she sat before reclaiming his own chair. She ordered tea from the hovering server, her hands wrapped around the menu like a shield. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. Ethan waited, letting her set the pace, watching her gather courage. Finally, she looked up at him, and her eyes were dark and deep and full of ghosts. "I don't know what you want from me," she said quietly. Ethan leaned forward, elbows on the table, hands clasped. He didn't reach for her, though he wanted to. "I want to know your name. I mean, I know it now, Elena Ross, but I want to hear you tell me. I want to know why you were standing by the river on New Year's Eve, looking like you were saying goodbye to something. I want to understand why you ran from me at the factory. I just want to know you." Elena's tea arrived. She wrapped her hands around the cup, but didn't drink. "Why? I'm just someone you kissed once." "You're not," Ethan said, and his voice was raw with honesty. "Elena, I tried to walk away 3 times that night, but I kept finding myself drawn back to you. My body moved on instinct when midnight came. I've replayed that kiss every single day since. Your lips, the way you trembled, how you looked at me like I was both your biggest fear and your last hope." He watched her eyes fill with tears and continued, desperate to make her understand. "I've been in boardrooms my entire adult life, negotiating, strategizing. This isn't that. This is me wanting to tell you that I haven't stopped thinking about you for a single moment, that I bought your factory. Yes, because it was the only way I could find you. And I know that sounds insane, maybe even frightening, but I need you to understand. I've never done anything like that. I've never felt anything like what I felt when I saw you." A tear escaped down Elena's cheek. She wiped it away angrily. "You don't know what you're saying. You don't know me. You don't know what I'm running from." "Then tell me," Ethan said gently. "Help me understand." And slowly, haltingly, Elena did. She told him about Miami, about Marcus, about the relationship that had started sweet and turned poisonous. She described the first time he hit her, how she'd made excuses, how it had escalated. She told him about the final night, the one that had sent her to the hospital and finally given her the courage to run. She explained about the restraining order, the fear, the calls that had started again after 3 months of silence. She didn't mention Marcus's name, didn't give Ethan ammunition to go after him, but she painted enough of a picture. And when she finished, her voice was barely a whisper. "I'm not whole. I'm broken and I'm scared, and you deserve someone who isn't either of those things." Ethan did reach for her then, his hand hovering above hers on the table, asking silent permission. She stared at his hand for a long moment, then nodded, barely a movement. His warm hand covered her trembling one, and the touch was electric, grounding, safe. "You're not broken," he said firmly. "You survived something horrific. That doesn't make you broken, Elena. It makes you strong." "I'm not," she protested, but her hand turned under his, their fingers threading together like they'd done it 1,000 times before. Yes, you are, and I want to be someone you can trust. I want you to know that I see you, not your past, not your scars, but you, the woman who stands by rivers watching fireworks, the woman who kissed me like she was remembering how to hope. That woman, Elena, that's who I'm here for." They sat like that, hands linked across the table while her tea went cold and his coffee sat untouched. Ethan told her about growing up in Boston, about his parents' messy divorce, and how it had made him afraid of commitment, about building his company from nothing and the loneliness of success. He described New Year's Eve from his perspective, how he'd seen her and felt struck by lightning. Elena listened, her defenses crumbling with every honest word, every vulnerable admission. This man, this powerful, successful, beautiful man, was offering her something she'd thought was lost forever. A chance, a choice, a new beginning. When the cafe owner gently informed them they were closing, it was already 6 p.m. They'd been talking for nearly 4 hours, and it felt like minutes. Outside on the darkening street, they stood awkwardly, neither wanting to leave. "Can I see you again?" Ethan asked, his hands in his pockets like he was restraining himself from reaching for her. Elena knew the smart answer, the safe answer. She should say no, should protect him from the disaster of her life. But she'd spent 3 months being smart and safe and lonely. "Yes," she whispered. Ethan's smile could have lit the entire city. "Tomorrow? I have work, but after work, I'll pick you up." Elena nodded, and before she could second-guess herself, she stood on her toes and kissed his cheek. Brief, chaste, but Ethan's eyes closed like she'd given him something precious. "Thank you," she said, "for not giving up on finding me." "I couldn't," Ethan replied simply. "You made me want to be someone worthy of your trust. I'll spend every day proving I am if you let me." That night, Elena lay in bed, replaying every word, every look, every moment of Ethan's hand holding hers. For the first time in months, when her phone buzzed at 11:53 p.m., an unknown number, she didn't feel only fear. She felt anger. Anger that Marcus was trying to steal this from her, this fragile, beautiful thing growing between her and Ethan. She didn't answer the call, but she didn't delete it either. She saved it, started keeping a record, evidence. Maybe Maya was right. Maybe she didn't have to run this time. Ethan picked Elena up after her shift on February 14th, Valentine's Day, though neither of them mentioned the significance. He drove them to the South Bank, retracing their steps from New Year's Eve, and they walked along the river as the sun set over London. "This is where I first saw you," Ethan said, stopping at the exact spot where Elena had stood 6 weeks earlier. "Right here, you were gripping the railing, and I was standing there." He pointed to a spot 20 feet back, "trying to convince myself to leave." "Why didn't you?" Elena asked. "Because you looked like I felt lost and found at the same time. And I just wanted to know if you felt as alone as I did." "I did," Elena admitted. "I was thinking about how I'd run away from everything I knew, and I still didn't feel safe. I was wondering if I'd ever feel safe again." Ethan turned to face her fully. "Do you feel safe right now?" Elena met his eyes, those hazel eyes that held gold in the streetlight. "With you? Yes. Terrifyingly, yes." He asked if he could kiss her, proper this time with permission. Elena breathed, yes. And when his lips met hers, it was different from New Year's Eve. Slower, deeper, full of intention and promise. No crowd to tear them apart, no chaos, just them and the river and the promise of something real. When they broke apart, both breathless, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "I know this is fast," he said. "I know we barely know each other, but Elena, I feel like I've been looking for you my entire life and I didn't even know you existed." "I feel it too," she whispered. "It terrifies me, but I feel it. They spent the next 2 days in a dream. Ethan took her to a botanical garden on February 15th, a hidden gem tourists never found, and they sat in a greenhouse surrounded by orchids while Elena sketched, and Ethan worked on his laptop. The comfortable silence felt like they'd done this 1,000 times before. Familiar and easy. "Tell me about your dreams," Ethan said, looking up from his screen. Before everything happened, what did you want?" Elena's pencil stilled on the page. "I wanted to be a fashion designer. I was in art school, had a scholarship. I was going to graduate and start my own line." "What happened?" "Marcus happened. He didn't like me spending time at school, said the other students were bad influences, that my professors were trying to turn me against him. I dropped out to keep the peace. Then I lost the scholarship, and by the time I realized what I'd given up, it was too late." Ethan was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke, his voice was gentle. "Would you design something for me?" Elena looked up, startled. "What?" "Anything. A shirt, a suit, whatever you want. I'd like to see your work, to know that part of you." The request was so genuine, so respectful of her abandoned talent, that Elena's eyes filled with tears. "You're serious?" "Completely. I'll pay you, obviously, commission rates." "I don't want your money, Ethan." "Then do it because it would make me happy. Because I want to wear something you created and think about you every time I put it on." Elena laughed through her tears. "That's ridiculously romantic. You know that?" "I'm trying very hard to woo you," Ethan said, smiling. "Is it working?" "Yes," Elena admitted. "Yes, it's working." 2 days later, Ethan invited her to his Mayfair penthouse. Elena was intimidated by the opulence, the floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking London, the modern art on the walls. But more than the wealth, she was struck by how impersonal it felt, like a hotel, not a home. "You don't like it," Ethan observed, watching her take in the space. "It's beautiful," Elena said carefully, "but it doesn't feel like you." "That's because it's not, really. I bought it 5 years ago because my realtor said it was a good investment, that a man of my position needed a certain type of residence. But I've never felt at home here. I've never felt at home anywhere, actually." The admission was vulnerable, lonely, and Elena crossed to him without thinking, taking his hand. "Maybe home isn't a place," she said softly. "Maybe it's a feeling." Ethan's fingers tightened on hers. "Is that what this is? This feeling?" "I think it might be." They cooked dinner together, a disaster involving burnt pasta and smoke alarms, and laughed until their sides hurt. After dinner, sitting on Ethan's balcony overlooking the glittering city, the conversation turned serious. Ethan took both her hands in his expression intense. "I know 3 days isn't long enough to say certain things. But Elena, I need you to know I haven't stopped thinking about you for a single moment since New Year's Eve. You make me want to be someone worthy of your trust. And I know you've been hurt. I know you're scared. But I'm not him. I could never hurt you." What would you want to hear from Ethan if you were Elena in this moment? Elena kissed him before he could say more. And this time, it wasn't gentle. It was heated, desperate, weeks of wanting pouring into the press of lips and the tangle of tongues. Ethan made a sound low in his throat and pulled her closer, his hands sliding into her hair the way they had on New Year's Eve. They pulled apart, breathless, both shaking. The chemistry between them was overwhelming, a living current. But Ethan pulled back, his restraint visible. "We should slow down," he said, voice rough. "I don't want to rush you, don't want you to feel pressured." "What if I don't want to slow down?" "Then we still will," Ethan said gently, pressing a soft kiss to her forehead. Because I'm not going anywhere, Elena. We have time. All the time you need. That night, Elena fell asleep on Ethan's couch, and he draped a blanket over her with such tender care that she felt it in her dreams. Safe, protected, cherished. He lifted her and carried her to one of his guest rooms. But in her purse, silenced, her phone lit up with 3 texts from Marcus. I know where you are. I know who you're with. Does he know what a liar you are? She woke up by morning to find him already dressed, standing by the floor-to-ceiling windows with his phone in hand. The tension in his shoulders was visible even from across the room, a rigid set to his spine that hadn't been there when she'd fallen asleep wrapped in his blanket, and his lingering kiss on her forehead. Ethan? Her voice was rough with sleep. He turned, and the expression on his face made her stomach drop. Not anger, but worry. Deep and troubled. I need to show you something, he said, crossing to her. He sat on the coffee table facing the couch, close but not touching, his phone held between them like evidence. I received an email an hour ago. Anonymous sender. Elena sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders against the sudden chill that had nothing to do with temperature. What kind of email? Photos of you from Miami, police reports, details about... He paused, choosing his words carefully. About what happened to you, about Marcus Thorne. The name spoken aloud in Ethan's voice felt like a violation. Elena's hands started shaking, her breath coming short and fast. Let me see. Ethan hesitated, then handed her the phone. The email was clinical, brutal in its efficiency. Photos she'd never seen before. Her younger self smiling next to Marcus at some restaurant, at the beach. Images that must have come from his phone or social media before she'd blocked him. Then the police reports, partially redacted, but clear enough. Domestic disturbance, assault and battery, restraining order filed. And at the bottom, a single line of text. Thought you should know who you're really involved with. She's playing you. Elena's vision blurred. She thrust the phone back at Ethan like it had burned her. I never wanted you to see those. I told you what happened, but seeing it like this, it makes it look like I was trying to hide something. Elena, stop. Ethan's voice was firm but gentle. He took her shaking hands in his. I'm not upset about your past. You already told me the important parts. I'm worried because someone is watching us, trying to sabotage this, whatever this is between us. Someone got these documents, found these photos, and sent them to me specifically to cause damage. The fear that had been lurking at the edges of Elena's happiness for 3 days crashed over her in full force. It's him. It has to be Marcus. He's found me. He knows about you, and now he's going to... God, Ethan, you don't understand what he's capable of. Then help me understand. Ethan moved from the coffee table to the couch beside her, close enough that she could feel his warmth. Tell me everything. No more protecting me from the truth. If we're going to handle this, I need all of it. So Elena told him. She told him about the blocked calls that had started again. 3 months of silence broken on New Year's Eve. The same night she'd kissed Ethan. About how the calls had increased in frequency, now coming almost daily. About Marcus's final threat in Miami. His promise that she'd never be free of him. That he'd find her no matter where she ran. Ethan's jaw tightened with each revelation. But he didn't interrupt. Didn't let go of her hands. When she finished, her voice was barely a whisper. He was quiet for a long moment. We need to involve my security team, he finally said. Get you protection. File for a restraining order here in the UK. Contact the authorities in Miami about him violating the original order. No. Elena pulled her hands free, standing abruptly. Ethan, you don't know him. Restraining orders don't work. They just make him angrier. When I filed in Miami, he showed up at my apartment the same night. And that was the night I ended up in the hospital. Legal papers don't stop him. They just give him something else to be furious about. Ethan stood too, his height suddenly overwhelming in the intimate space. So what? We do nothing? We just wait for him to escalate? I leave, Elena said, the words tearing out of her throat. I disappear again. Somewhere he can't connect to you. Somewhere you're safe. Absolutely not. Ethan's voice was sharp, definitive. He closed the distance between them in 2 strides. Elena, look at me. She did, and his eyes were blazing with an intensity that stole her breath. I'm not letting you run again. Not from him, and not from me. We face this together. You don't understand what you're saying, Elena protested, but her voice wavered. This isn't your fight. You shouldn't have to deal with my mess. It became my fight the moment I kissed you on New Year's Eve, Ethan said. The moment I decided you were worth buying an entire company to find. You think I'm going to just let you walk away now because some abusive bastard is trying to intimidate you? Intimidate us? That's not happening. Elena felt tears streaming down her face. He'll hurt you. If he thinks you matter to me, he'll come after you just to punish me. Ethan's expression softened. He reached up slowly, telegraphing his movement, and cupped her face in his hands. Then let him try. Elena, I have resources he doesn't. Security, lawyers, connections. You've been fighting this alone, but you don't have to anymore. Please, trust me. Stay here, where I can keep you safe. Let me help. The temptation to say yes, to lean into his strength and stop running, was almost overwhelming. But Elena had learned the hard way that depending on someone else's protection was dangerous. What if your security isn't enough? She whispered. Then we'll make it enough, Ethan said simply. Together. The word hung between them, a promise and a plea. Elena closed her eyes, feeling his thumbs brush away her tears with infinite gentleness. Okay, she breathed. Okay, I'll stay. Ethan pulled her into his arms, and she went willingly, burying her face in his chest. She felt his lips press against the top of her head, felt his arms tighten around her like he could shield her from the world through sheer force of will. You'll be fine, he murmured. I promise I will protect you. At 9:33 that morning, Ethan made calls. A private security firm, a lawyer specializing in international law, a contact at the Metropolitan Police. Elena sat curled in an armchair, watching him work with quiet efficiency, and felt something unfamiliar settle in her chest. Hope that someone was finally fighting for her instead of against her. During the evening, Elena's phone rang. Maya's name flashed on the screen, and Elena answered on the second ring. Maya? Thank God. Elle, I need to tell you something, and I need you not to panic. Maya's voice was tight with worry. Elena's blood went cold. What happened? A man came to the factory today. American, probably late 30s, charming. But with these eyes, Elle, they were cold. Dead. He was asking questions about you. Said he was an old friend trying to surprise you. What did you tell him? Elena's voice came out strangled. Ethan, who'd been on his own phone across the room, immediately ended his call and crossed to her. Nothing, Maya said firmly. I told him I didn't know anyone by that name. But Elle, he left a message. He said, and I'm quoting exactly, "Tell Elena that Marcus says hello." The phone slipped from Elena's fingers. Ethan caught it before it hit the floor. Maya, this is Ethan Vance. What did this man look like? Elena heard Maya's surprised intake of breath, then her voice describing Marcus with perfect accuracy. 6 feet tall, athletic build, sandy blonde hair, a charming smile that didn't reach his eyes. Ethan's expression grew darker with each detail. If he comes back, you call the police immediately, Ethan said, and you call this number. He rattled off a string of digits. That's my head of security. He'll have someone there in minutes. After he hung up, Ethan pulled Elena into his lap in the armchair, holding her as she shook. "He's in London," she whispered. "He's here. He's actively looking for me." "And he won't find you," Ethan said firmly. "You're staying here. I'm arranging 24-hour security, and we're filing that restraining order today. Whether you think it will work or not, we create a paper trail, documentation. If he comes near you, he'll be arrested." What would you do if you were in Elena's position? Would you trust Ethan's protection? Or would the fear make you want to run? That evening, Ethan's security team arrived. 3 professionals who did a full sweep of the penthouse, installed additional locks, and set up a security protocol. Elena felt like she was living in a thriller film, surreal and terrifying. But Ethan stayed close, his presence a constant anchor. Wrapped in Ethan's arms on the couch with BBC News playing mutely on the television, Elena finally spoke the fear she'd been holding. "What if being with me destroys everything you've built? Your reputation, your company, your life?" Ethan tilted her chin up so she had to meet his eyes. "Then I'll build something new. Elena, nothing I've accomplished means anything if I'm alone in it. You make me want to be someone worthy of your trust. I'll spend every day proving I am if you let me." She kissed him, pouring 3 days of gratitude and terror and desperate hope into the press of her lips. Ethan responded with matching intensity, his hands sliding into her hair, angling her head for deeper access. The kiss went from tender to heated in seconds, weeks of building chemistry igniting between them. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Ethan rested his forehead against hers. "Stay with me tonight. Actually stay. I'll take the guest room. You can have my bed. I need to know you're close." Elena nodded, not trusting her voice. That night, lying in Ethan's bed, surrounded by his scent, she felt safe for the first time in years. But across London, Sienna Brooks sat in her pristine apartment, staring at her phone. The email she'd sent hadn't worked, hadn't driven them apart. If anything, from the security team requests coming through Ethan's office, it had driven them closer together. She needed a new strategy. That night, Ethan's phone rang with an urgent call from his CFO. A deal in Manchester, 6 months of negotiation with a manufacturing consortium, was falling apart. The partners were threatening to walk, and they would only meet with Ethan personally. "I need to go," Ethan told Elena over breakfast, frustration evident in every line of his body. "But I don't want to leave you alone, not with Marcus in London." "I'll be fine," Elena assured him, though her stomach twisted with anxiety. "You have security here, all the locks. I'll stay inside, won't open the door for anyone." "I'll be back by tonight," Ethan promised. "Keep your phone on. If anything feels wrong, anything at all, you call me immediately." He kissed her goodbye at the door, a long, thorough kiss that felt like a promise. "I'm serious, Elena. Anything strange, you call." "I will," she said. "Go save your deal." An hour after Ethan left, the penthouse door opened. Elena's heart seized before she heard the familiar voice. "Ethan, I've got those contracts you wanted to review." Sienna Brooks stepped into the living room, immaculate in a navy dress, her eyes landing on Elena with surprise that looked almost genuine. "Oh, I didn't realize you'd still be here." Elena stood from the couch, suddenly aware of how she must look in Ethan's shirt and her leggings from yesterday. "Ethan's in Manchester. He didn't mention you were coming by." "Emergency contracts," Sienna said smoothly, holding up a leather portfolio. "I have an access code for work purposes. I'll just leave these and go." But she didn't move toward leaving. She set the portfolio on the entry table and turned to face Elena fully, her expression shifting into something Elena couldn't quite read. "Actually, since we're both here, maybe we should talk." "About what?" Elena asked wearily. About Ethan, about you, about the reality of this situation. Sienna's voice was calm, professional, but something cold lived underneath. Can we sit? Every instinct told Elena to refuse, to ask Sienna to leave, but curiosity and a sick sense of inevitability kept her rooted. Fine. They sat in the living room, Sienna perched elegantly on the armchair, Elena defensive on the couch. The silence stretched for a long moment before Sienna spoke. How long have you known Ethan? 3 weeks, almost 4, Elena said. Why? I've known him for 7 years. Sienna's smile was perfect, professional. I've been his director of acquisition since he started Vance Global. I've seen him through every business deal, every relationship, every phase of his life. I'm aware you work together, Elena said carefully. Work together, yes, but it's more than that. I know Ethan in ways no one else does. I know how he operates, how he thinks, what he needs. Sienna leaned forward slightly. And I know his patterns with women. Elena's stomach clenched. I don't think I want to hear this. You need to hear this, Sienna said, her voice gentle, almost pitying. Ethan is a good man, a brilliant man, but he has a type of relationship he falls into. It burns bright and fast, intense and all-consuming, and then reality sets in. The novelty fades. He gets bored. He's not bored, Elena protested, but doubt crept into her voice. Not yet, Sienna agreed. Right now, you're a project, a puzzle to solve. You're damaged. You need saving. And Ethan loves to fix things. It makes him feel heroic, valuable in a way that business success doesn't. But Elena, what happens when you're fixed? When you're no longer broken and scared? When you're just a normal woman with normal needs and he's back to his board meetings and international deals? Each word landed like a carefully placed blade, slicing into Elena's deepest insecurities. You don't know what you're talking about, Oysam. Sienna pulled out her phone, swiping through screens before turning it toward Elena. These are tabloid drafts. They'll publish in 3 days unless Ethan's PR team kills them. Elena stared at the headlines. Billionaire's secret girlfriend, domestic abuse survivor, or gold digger? Another read, Ethan Vance hiding relationship with damaged woman, bored concerned. These aren't real, Elena whispered, but they looked terrifyingly authentic. They're very real, Sienna said softly. Investors are nervous. The board has questions. Ethan's reputation is on the line, and it's affecting business. He won't tell you this because he's too kind, too invested in being your savior, but I'm telling you because someone needs to. Elena felt her world tilting. Sienna's voice dropped, intimate and poisonous. If you love him, truly love him, you'll leave before you destroy everything he's built. He's too kind to ask you himself, so I'm asking for him. How much money will it take for you to go back to America? Name your price. The suggestion hit Elena like a slap. You think I'm with him for money? I think you're with him because he makes you feel safe and special and rescued. But Ethan needs more than that. He needs someone who can stand beside him in his world, not someone he has to hide and protect. So I'm offering you a clean exit, money, a fresh start somewhere far from London, and Ethan gets to keep the empire he spent his life building. Elena stood abruptly, rage and heartbreak warring in her chest. Get out. Think about it, Sienna said, standing gracefully. Think about what's best for him, not just what feels good for you. After Sienna left, Elena stood in the middle of Ethan's perfect, impersonal penthouse and felt everything crumble. The tabloids, fake or not, reflected her deepest fears. She was damaged. She was dangerous to Ethan's reputation, and Sienna had known him for 7 years, had seen him through countless relationships. What if she was right? What if Ethan's intensity was just his pattern, and Elena was too broken to see it. She pulled out her journal, the one where she'd sketched Ethan's face, and wrote with shaking hands, "Ethan, you made me believe in new beginnings, and I'll always be grateful for these weeks. But I can't be the reason you lose everything you've built. This isn't goodbye. It's me setting you free. Please don't look for me. You deserve someone whole, someone who fits in your world. I'm sorry I'm not her. E." She left the note on his coffee table, grabbed her coat and bag, and walked out of the penthouse. She checked into a grim hotel in Camden, paid cash for 3 nights, and turned off her phone. Hours later, Sienna returned to the penthouse using her access code. She found Elena's note, read it once, and felt a flicker of genuine guilt. But it passed quickly. She burned the handwritten note in the fireplace and replaced it with a typed version. "This was a mistake. Forget about me." Cold, impersonal, nothing like Elena's voice, but it would have to do. When Ethan returned, tired from the Manchester meetings but eager to see Elena, he found the typed note and felt his world stop. He sat in his penthouse, holding the note and feeling devastation settle into his bones. The words were wrong. Too cold, too distant. But Elena was gone, her phone off. No trace of where she'd run. He called Maya, who knew nothing. Called his security team, who confirmed Elena had left of her own volition that morning. No one had forced her. No one had threatened her. She'd simply left. Fury replaced grief. Ethan pulled up the penthouse security footage, scanning through the day's recordings. He saw Elena leaving, saw her devastated expression, and he saw Sienna entering. Sienna, who had an access code for work emergencies. Sienna, who'd been in the penthouse for 97 minutes before Elena left. Ethan took his car keys and left. An hour later, he stood in Sienna's office. She looked up from her desk, surprise flickering across her face. "Ethan, what are you doing here? I thought you were in Manchester." "What did you say to her?" His voice was dangerously quiet. "To who?" "Don't play games, Sienna. You were in my penthouse this morning. You talked to Elena. Then she left me this." He threw the typed note on her desk. "What did you say?" Sienna's composure cracked. "I told her the truth, that she's wrong for you, that she'll destroy your reputation, that you deserve better than a broken woman with a violent ex." "You had no right," Ethan bit out. "No right to interfere, no right to speak for me." "Someone had to," Sienna said, standing. Her professional mask was falling away, revealing something raw underneath. "Ethan, I've watched you for 7 years, waited for you, made myself indispensable, and then she appears. This damaged stranger, and in 3 weeks, she has everything I've wanted." The confession hung in the air between them. Ethan stared at her, seeing clearly for the first time. "You love me," he said flatly. "Yes," Sienna admitted. "Is that so impossible to believe? And you sabotaged us. The email about Elena's past, that was you." How do you think Ethan should handle Sienna's betrayal? With anger or understanding? Sienna hesitated, then nodded. "I facilitated it. I thought if you saw her history, you'd realize she's too much risk, too much damage. But it backfired, made you protect her more. So I tried something else." "You manipulated her into leaving," Ethan said, rage building in his voice. "You preyed on her insecurities, her trauma, and you drove her away." "I gave her an out," Sienna countered. "I gave her a choice to do what's best for you." "You gave her your poison disguised as concern." Ethan's voice was ice. "Sienna, you're fired. Effective immediately. And if you ever contact me or Elena again, I will destroy you professionally. Do you understand?" Sienna's face went white. "Ethan, please, I was trying to help." "Get out of my building." He left before she could respond, but the victory felt hollow. Sienna was dealt with, but Elena was still gone, still believing the lies. Sienna sat alone in her office, humiliation burning through her veins. 7 years, destroyed in one conversation. And for what? Ethan was going to find Elena. He was going to fix this, and Sienna would have nothing, unless Elena stayed gone. Sienna pulled out her phone and sent a text to a number she'd acquired through less than legal means. Marcus Thorne's number. She's at the Camden Plaza Hotel, room 214. Thought you should know. Spiteful, petty, and final. But Sienna hit send anyway. At 10:30 p.m. in her grim Camden hotel room, Elena sat on the stained bedspread and felt hollowed out. She'd done the right thing, she told herself. Protected Ethan, set him free. But it hurt like dying. A knock on her door startled her. She assumed housekeeping and opened it without checking. Marcus Thorne stood in the hallway, and his smile was the charming one, the mask he wore before the monster came out. "Hello, baby," he said. "Miss me?" Elena tried to slam the door, but Marcus's foot was already in the jam. "Oh no, baby, don't be rude. I just want to talk, that's all. I've changed, Elle. Been in therapy working on myself. I came all this way to apologize properly." "I don't want your apology," Elena said, fear making her voice shake. "Leave or I'll call the police." "And tell them what? That your ex-boyfriend knocked on your door? I haven't threatened you, haven't touched you. I'm just here to talk." His eyes, cold despite the warm smile, flicked down the hallway. "But if you'd rather talk somewhere public, somewhere safe, I'm happy to meet you in the lobby." Elena calculated her options. Marcus in her room was dangerous. Marcus in a public lobby with witnesses was marginally safer. "Fine, lobby, 10 minutes. She grabbed her phone, turned it on for the first time in hours, and watched it explode with notifications. 17 missed calls from Ethan, 34 texts, voicemails. She ignored them all and went downstairs. Marcus was waiting in the shabby lobby, sitting in a worn armchair like he owned the place. Elena sat across from him as far as the furniture arrangement allowed. "You look good," Marcus said. "London looks good on you." "Say what you came to say," Elena replied. "Then leave." "I'm sorry." The words sounded rehearsed. "For everything I did in Miami. The anger, the violence. It was wrong. I was wrong. I've been working with a therapist, understanding my triggers, learning better coping mechanisms." "Good for you," Elena said flatly. "I'm glad you're getting help. But that doesn't change anything between us. There is no us. There's a restraining order and an ocean, and that's how it's staying." Marcus's smile tightened fractionally. "I saw you've moved on. Ethan Vance, impressive. How does a factory worker meet a billionaire?" The question was barbed, designed to hurt. "That's none of your business." "I'm just curious," Marcus said, pulling out his phone. "Wondering if he knows about us, about your past." He swiped through photos, then turned the screen toward her. "Look at this. Ethan and this blonde woman. Sienna something. They go way back. Years of photos together. Galas, business trips. Awful cozy for just colleagues." Elena's stomach clenched. The photos were real. Ethan and Sienna at various events, her hand on his arm, his smile warm. Years of history captured in images. "He's using you," Marcus said softly, poisonously. "Men like that. They don't end up with women like you, Elena. You're entertainment, a distraction. But women like her," he pointed at Sienna in the photos. "That's who they marry. That's who fits." "You don't know what you're talking about," Elena said, but doubt poisoned her voice. Sienna's words from that morning echoed in her head. At that moment, across the lobby, the door burst open and Ethan Vance strode in, his expression wild with worry until his eyes landed on Elena. Then he saw Marcus, saw Elena's tears, and his entire demeanor shifted into something protective and dangerous. "Elena," he said, his voice cutting across the lobby. "Are you okay? Did he hurt you?" Elena's eyes met Ethan's across the shabby space, and something in her chest cracked open. He'd found her. Of course he'd found her. She shook her head. No. Ethan's attention shifted to Marcus, recognition and rage flickering across his face. "Take your hand off her." Elena realized Marcus's hand was on her shoulder, possessive and threatening. She tried to shake it off, but his grip tightened. "We're just talking," Marcus said, standing but keeping his hand on Elena. "Old friends catching up?" Ethan crossed the lobby in 4 strides. "I got your note. I don't believe you wrote it. But even if you did, even if you want to leave, I need to hear it from you, not on paper." Elena opened her mouth, Sienna's script ready on her tongue. She would tell Ethan she was wrong for him, that she'd ruin him, that he should forget her. But the words wouldn't come. Because they were lies. She started. Marcus's hand clamped down harder on her shoulder, bruising. "She's fine. She doesn't need you playing hero, Vance." Ethan's eyes went dangerous. "Take your hand off her. Now." Marcus sneered, making a comment about billionaires thinking they could buy anything, including damaged women. But Ethan ignored him entirely, his focus only on Elena. "Tell me," Ethan said again, softer. "Tell me you don't feel this." Marcus, sensing he was losing control, grabbed Elena's wrist and pulled hard toward the exit. The grip was painful, familiar, everything she'd run from. Ethan moved before Elena could blink. He broke Marcus's hold with one sharp movement and put himself physically between them, his body a wall. "Touch her again, and I'll have you arrested," Ethan said, his voice deadly calm. The hotel manager appeared with security, alerted by the commotion. Marcus, not wanting police involvement, backed toward the door with a final threat. "This isn't over, Elena. We're not over." Then he was gone. And Elena was shaking so hard her legs wouldn't hold her. Ethan didn't touch her immediately. He just stood close, giving her space to breathe, to choose. "I'm sorry," Elena whispered. "Sienna told me I'd ruin your life, that you'd get bored, that I'm just broken and you're trying to fix me. And I believed her. I believed I was protecting you by leaving." Ethan's expression transformed from worry to fury to tenderness in the space of heartbeats. "Do I look bored? Elena, I'm terrified. I've never felt like this. You didn't break my life. You're the first thing that's made it make sense." Elena collapsed into him, sobbing against his chest. Ethan's arms came around her like bands of steel, holding her together while she fell apart. "I fired Sienna," he murmured against her hair. "She admitted everything, the manipulation, the lies. I don't want someone whole, Elena. I want you, healing, scared, brave, beautiful you, and I want to be there for every version of it." They stood like that in the shabby hotel lobby, holding each other like lifelines until Elena's sobs subsided into hiccups and exhaustion. Outside in her car, Sienna watched through the glass doors as Ethan held Elena like she was his entire world. She'd orchestrated all of it, the email, the confrontation, even tipping off Marcus, and it had all failed spectacularly. Elena had won without even trying. Sienna started her car and drove away, her 7-year dream dying quietly in the London night. Ethan took Elena back to his penthouse. She was shaking, exhausted, but she didn't protest when his hand found hers in the car or when his security team did another sweep of the building before allowing them inside. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving her hollowed out and fragile. "Sit," Ethan said gently, guiding her to the couch. "I'm going to make tea, and then we're going to talk. Really talk. No more secrets, no more half-truths, everything." Elena nodded, wrapping herself in the blanket that still smelled like her from 2 nights ago, when she'd fallen asleep feeling safe. Ethan moved in the kitchen with quiet efficiency, and she watched him. This man who'd bought a company to find her, who'd fired his closest colleague for hurting her, who'd walked into a hotel lobby ready to fight for her. He returned with 2 mugs, set them on the coffee table, and sat beside her. Not touching, but close enough that she could feel his warmth. "How did you find me?" Elena asked. "Maya. She called my office this afternoon, worried sick. Said you texted her the hotel name yesterday when you were scared. I was in the car before she finished the sentence." Ethan's jaw tightened. "When I got back from Manchester and found that note, I knew something was wrong. It didn't sound like you. Then I saw the security footage, saw Sienna had been here." "What did she tell you?" Elena told him. When she mentioned Sienna's confession, Ethan's expression darkened. "That she loves me? Has for 7 years? That she sent the email about your past? That she manipulated you this morning, preyed on your insecurities to make you leave?" He shook his head, his hand finding Elena's, threading their fingers together. "She was wrong about everything. You're not something I need saving from, Elena. You're the best thing that's happened to me." Elena felt tears sliding down her cheeks again. "She showed me fake tabloids. Said your board was concerned, that investors were nervous. She made it sound like I was destroying your reputation just by existing." "My reputation isn't worth a damn if it means losing you," Ethan said fiercely. "And for the record, there are no tabloids, no board concerns. Sienna fabricated all of it." "Marcus showed me photos," Elena continued, the words tumbling out, "of you and Sienna together over the years, at galas, business trips. He said men like you don't end up with women like me, that I'm just entertainment and she's the type you'd actually marry." Ethan made a frustrated sound and shifted closer, cupping her face in both hands. "Listen to me very carefully. Sienna was my colleague, nothing more. Those photos were work events, professional obligations. I never saw her as anything but a business associate. And as for what type of woman I'd marry..." His voice softened, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "Maybe I don't know all the facts of your life yet, all the little details and stories. But I know how it feels when you smile, like you've forgotten how, and your face is remembering. I know you bite your lip when you're nervous and you hum when you sketch. I know you've been hurt badly, and you still chose to trust me anyway." He paused, his eyes searching hers with an intensity that stole her breath. "I know when I'm with you, I'm the version of myself I actually want to be. That's not nothing, Elena, that's everything." Elena closed her eyes, fresh tears escaping. "How do you always know exactly what to say?" "To be honest, I don't even know. It just flows," Ethan said simply. "Every word." She opened her eyes and found him looking at her like she hung the moon. "I'm sorry I ran. I'm sorry I believed her instead of trusting you. You don't protect me by leaving, Elena. You protect us by staying." Ethan's voice was rough with emotion. "Promise me, no more running. Whatever comes, we face it together." "I promise," Elena whispered. Ethan kissed her then, soft and deep and full of promise. When they broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. "There's something else I need to tell you. About how I found you. About the factory." Elena pulled back slightly, studying his face. "What about it?" Ethan took a breath like he was bracing for impact. "The acquisition wasn't random. I bought Sterling Textiles specifically because you worked there. I hired investigators after New Year's Eve. Had them pull security footage from South Bank. We found one frame, grainy but clear enough, and you were wearing an employee badge. We enhanced it, traced it to your factory. So I bought the entire company just for one chance to find you again." Elena stared at him, processing. "You bought a whole company? For me?" "Yes." "That's insane. Things we do for love," Ethan said, a small smile tugging at his mouth. "But I was desperate. I tried everything else, And I couldn't stop thinking about you. Couldn't let you just disappear. So I did something insane because the alternative was never seeing you again. And that was unacceptable. Elena should have been scared by the intensity, the obsessive edge to his confession. Instead, she felt something warm unfurl in her chest. Ethan Vance, are you telling me you went full corporate stalker for a woman you kissed once? I prefer creatively resourceful, Ethan said, his smile widening. But yes, completely unhinged stalker behavior. Are you horrified? I should be, Elena admitted. But mostly I'm overwhelmed. No one's ever... Marcus made me feel like I wasn't worth the effort, like I should be grateful he tolerated me at all. And you bought a company. Ethan's expression turned serious. You are worth every effort, every resource, every insane gesture, and I will spend however long it takes proving that to you. Elena kissed him harder this time. Weeks of fear and doubt and desperate longing pouring into the press of her lips. Ethan responded immediately, his hands sliding into her hair, angling her head for deeper access. The kiss went from tender to heated in seconds, the chemistry that had been building between them since New Year's Eve igniting like a wildfire. When they finally broke apart, Elena's hands were fisted in Ethan's shirt, and his pupils were blown wide with desire. Stay with me tonight, Ethan said, his voice rough. Not the guest room this time, stay with me. Yes, Elena breathed. Ethan stood, pulling her up with him. What followed was slow and reverent and healing in ways Elena hadn't known she needed. Ethan touched her like she was precious, asked permission with every new caress, made sure she felt safe and cherished and wanted. When she finally fell asleep, wrapped in his arms, she felt something she hadn't felt in years. Whole. The next morning, Ethan's lawyer called. Ethan took the call on speakerphone while Elena curled against his side in bed, his arms secure around her shoulders. Mr. Vance, I have news regarding Marcus Thorne. UK Border Force arrested him at Heathrow this morning, attempting to board a flight to Amsterdam. Our expedited international restraining order was flagged in their system. He's being held pending deportation to Miami, where he'll face charges for violating the original restraining order. Elena's entire body went rigid. He's arrested? He can't come back? He's banned from entering the UK for a minimum of 10 years, the lawyer confirmed. And the Miami charges carry potential jail time. Miss Ross, you're safe. He can't reach you anymore. After the call ended, Elena sat in stunned silence. 3 months of fear, of looking over her shoulder, of blocked calls and threats. And it was over. Just like that. It's really over, she whispered. Ethan pulled her closer. It's over. You're safe. Elena turned in his arms and kissed him, gratitude and relief, and something deeper pouring between them. Thank you for protecting me, for believing me, for not giving up. I told you, Ethan murmured against her lips. I'm not going anywhere. The following weeks passed in a blur of healing and discovery. Elena moved into Ethan's penthouse officially. She returned to the factory, but Ethan had already begun implementing changes. Better wages, safer conditions, respect for the workers who'd been overlooked for years. Maya teased her mercilessly about dating the boss, but her eyes held approval. On March 15th, Ethan surprised Elena with a studio space in Shoreditch, light-filled and perfect, equipped with everything she'd need to design again. I can't accept this, Elena protested, overwhelmed by the gleaming sewing machines, the bolts of fabric, the sketching table positioned by the window. You can and you will, Ethan said firmly. You have talent, Elena. Talent that got buried under trauma and survival. But you're safe now. And it's time to let yourself dream again. Elena designed her first collection that spring. 10 pieces that felt like resurrection, like taking back parts of herself she'd thought were lost forever. Ethan wore the suit she made him, charcoal gray with subtle detailing, to every important meeting. He told anyone who asked that his girlfriend was a brilliant designer, and the pride in his voice made Elena fall a little more in love with him each time. By summer, Elena had her first client outside of Ethan, a small boutique in Notting Hill that wanted 3 exclusive pieces. By autumn, she had 5 clients and a waiting list. "I'm so proud of you," Ethan told her in October, watching her work in the studio with complete focus, humming the way she always did when she was creating. "I couldn't have done this without you," Elena said, looking up from her sketching. "You could have," Ethan corrected gently. "You would have found your way eventually. I just got to be there to see it happen." On December 20th, Ethan asked Elena what she wanted to do for New Year's Eve. "Go back to South Bank," she said immediately. "Stand where we met. Start the year the way we started this. Together." Ethan's smile was tender and knowing. "I think that can be arranged." December 31st arrived, cold and clear, London preparing for another New Year celebration. Ethan and Elena arrived at South Bank, bundled in coats, hands intertwined. The crowd was already thick, couples and friends and tourists all waiting for midnight. They found the exact spot where they'd met, where Elena had gripped the railing and Ethan had watched her for an hour before finding the courage to approach. "Do you remember last year?" Ethan asked, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his chin resting on her shoulder. "I was standing right over there trying to convince myself to leave." "I remember," Elena said softly. "I saw you too, you know. I felt you watching me an hour before midnight. I was too scared to turn around, but I hoped you'd come closer." Ethan turned her in his arms, surprise and wonder on his face. "You knew I was there?" "I felt you," Elena corrected, "like gravity pulling at me. That kiss, Ethan, I wanted it as much as you did. I was just too broken to admit it then. And look at you now. Look at everything you've accomplished this year. Your designs, your clients, your strength. You're extraordinary." Elena felt tears prick her eyes, but they were happy tears. "This year, you gave me a reason to believe in fate, in second chances, in the idea that sometimes the right person finds you when you least expect it. You've made every single day of this year the best of my life." The crowd around them began counting down. 60, 59, 58. Ethan reached into his pocket. 45, 44, 43. He dropped to one knee. The crowd nearby gasped, phones coming out to capture the moment, but Elena only saw him. 30, 29, 28. Ethan pulled out a ring, simple and perfect, a single diamond that caught the streetlight like a captured star. 20, 19, 18. "Elena Ross," Ethan said, his voice clear and strong despite the chaos around them. "Just like how I've made this year the best year for you, you've also made every single day of this year the best of my life. Will you marry me?" 10, 9, 8. Elena was crying, nodding, pulling him up. "Yes, 1,000 times yes. 5, 4, 3. Ethan slipped the ring on her finger. 2, 1. "Happy New Year!" The sky exploded in gold and silver, and Ethan kissed her as the Thames reflected 1,000 lights, and the crowd cheered around them. This time, when they kissed, surrounded by celebrating strangers just like a year ago, Ethan didn't disappear into the crowd. This time they walked into the new year hand in hand toward a future they'd build together. 6 months later, on a warm June evening, Elena stood backstage at a fashion show in a converted warehouse in East London. Her first real show, 25 pieces, months of work. She was terrified and exhilarated in equal measure. The show began. Models walked the runway wearing her designs, fabric and vision made real. The audience, small but important, local fashion bloggers, boutique owners, and one very major buyer from Selfridges watched with interest. In the front row, Ethan Vance sat with undisguised pride on his face, his eyes tracking every piece, every model, but always coming back to the wings where he knew Elena was watching. When the final model walked, the show coordinator pushed Elena gently towards the runway. "Go take your bow." Elena walked out on shaking legs, the applause washing over her like a wave. She looked at the audience, at the faces showing genuine appreciation for her work, and felt something settle in her chest. This was who she was always meant to be. Her eyes found Ethan in the front row. He was on his feet, applauding harder than anyone, and when their gazes met, he mouthed 3 words. "I love you." She mouthed them back. This man, who'd bought a company to find her, who'd protected her from her demons, who'd given her the space and support to remember how to dream. After the show, as guests mingled and Elena accepted congratulations with flushed cheeks and disbelieving smiles, Ethan found her in the crowd. He pulled her aside to a quiet corner, his hands framing her face. "You were magnificent," he said. "Watching you up there, seeing what you've created, Elena, I have never been more proud of another human being." "Thank you," Elena whispered. "For everything. For finding me, for keeping me, for believing I could do this when I didn't believe it myself." "I didn't do anything," Ethan said softly. "This was all you. Your talent, your hard work, your courage. I just got to witness it." Elena kissed him long and deep, not caring who saw. When they broke apart, Ethan's eyes held that familiar heat, the chemistry that still ignited between them like lightning. "Take me home," Elena said. "I want to celebrate properly." Ethan's smile turned wicked. "With pleasure, soon-to-be Mrs. Vance." For goy, they left the show hand in hand, and as they walked to Ethan's car under the June stars, Elena thought about the woman she'd been a year and a half ago. Broken, terrified, running. That woman had stood by the Thames on New Year's Eve, convinced she'd never feel safe or whole or loved again. That woman had been wrong. Sometimes the right person finds you in the chaos. Sometimes a midnight kiss changes everything. Sometimes running away leads you exactly where you needed to be. And sometimes, if you were very lucky, love didn't just heal you. It helped you remember who you'd always been underneath the pain. Elena squeezed Ethan's hand as they drove through London, her ring catching the streetlights, her heart full to bursting. She was home, finally, completely, impossibly home. Not in a place, but in the feeling of his hand in hers, his smile when he looked at her, his unwavering belief that she was worth fighting for. That was home, and it was everything. 3 months later, on a crisp September afternoon, Elena Ross became Elena Vance in a small ceremony in the same botanical garden where they'd spent their second date. Maya stood as her maid of honor, crying through the entire ceremony. Ethan's best man, his college roommate flown in from Boston, elbowed him when his voice cracked, saying his vows. "I promise to spend every day proving I'm worthy of your trust," Ethan said, his eyes locked on Elena's. "I promise to protect you, support you, and love you through every triumph and every fear. I promise that when you forget how strong you are, I'll remind you. And I promise that no matter what comes, we face it together. Always together." Elena's vows were simpler, but no less powerful. "You taught me that broken things can heal, that running sometimes leads you home, that love doesn't have to hurt to be real. You gave me back myself, and I promise to spend our life together showing you every day what a gift that was. I love you, Ethan Vance. Thank you for not giving up on finding me." When the officiant pronounced them married, Ethan kissed her like they were alone on South Bank at midnight, like she was the answer to every question he'd never known to ask. The reception was small, intimate, filled with people who genuinely loved them. No press, no spectacle, just celebration. As they danced their first dance to a song Elena had hummed while sketching, and Ethan had remembered, tracked down, and surprised her with, he whispered against her ear, "Happy, Mrs. Vance?" "Impossibly, overwhelmingly, completely happy," Elena whispered back. And she was. The girl who'd fled Miami, broken and terrified, had found her way to London, to a midnight kiss, to a man who'd moved mountains to find her again. She'd found her way home, and it was everything. The end. Moral lesson. True love is not about finding someone who fixes you. It is about finding someone who creates a space safe enough for you to fix yourself. Ethan didn't just rescue Elena. He provided the sanctuary and the belief she needed to reclaim her own strength and talent. The deepest moral of this story is that your past does not define your worth, but your courage to heal defines your future. We often think that being broken makes us unlovable, but it is often our scars that draw the right person to us, not to pity us, but to recognize the warrior within. Furthermore, this story teaches us that integrity is the loudest voice in a room full of lies. Sienna's manipulation and Marcus's intimidation failed because the truth of Elena and Ethan's connection was rooted in genuine vulnerability and honesty. When you find someone who is willing to buy the company to find you, meaning someone who sees your value when you are at your lowest, hold on to them, but never forget that the most important person to find in the wreckage of your past is yourself.